Welcome to Retelling the News. I am your host, Jasmine Garcia, and joining me today are...
Shamila Karanakaran, and of all the news we could have gotten today, these were the two nickels we did not need.
Justin being drowned in a 6-inch pond, Bailey.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
And today, we're basically going from the bad to the ugly to the good, maybe? Kind of. This was very last minute because I just happened to get a Google notification about the trailer for a Little Mermaid horror movie dropping. And I was like, well, obviously I need to check this out because this is exactly my thing. And, it certainly is a trailer.
It's not the lore.
It is not the lore. Not even remotely. It is not even this one other... It was like a fan-made trailer by RC1 Beauty that came out in like 2019. It's not even that level where it's basically just someone on YouTube messing around.
No, but for that fan-made trailer, that last shot with the mermaid coming out with the inhuman mouth, like the anglerfish mouth, like Melina from Mortal Kombat, that was a great place to end on. Unfortunately, the official trailer for this did not live up to it. I'm barely horrified.
Yeah, no, it's like, why is it the only time I've ever finally gotten my anglerfish mermaid that I've been dreaming of for years came from a fan-made trailer and not this? This felt like the perfect time to do that.
The main thing that kept sticking out to me, I don't usually watch trailers, but the sort of horror film, I'm concerned. You show the good parts in the trailer to make people interested in the film.
Not the exposition.
So if that's the case, then, oh, those are the money shots, I see.
No!
Yeah,
we
that was a
literally
very
just
good
open
point.
up with, like, the character is literally named Eric Prince, like, points for creativity there.
Boo.
And it's all exposition explaining his findings and stuff, and, like, something about finding Sumerian ruins in a place where it's not supposed to be in the first place. Like, that's not even my biggest gripe about the film. It's like, every one of the background actors is black, but the main three that we focus on, they are all white, and it is not a good sign. It's giving me very Indiana Jones vibes, and not in a good way.
No, and yeah, that's a very good point, because it is supposed to take place on a Caribbean island, which...
No!
I guess maybe they were trying to take from the 2023 Disney remake, which, like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Disney incorporated all that way better if you're going to go by this trailer. And that's another thing, like, yeah, they basically make the prince character, quote-unquote, an archaeologist, and the mermaid's name is Aurora Bay.
Are they trying to do a Mummy remake here?
Exactly, because for those of you who are listening and were only mad at the 2017 Mummy remake for not being like the 90s Mummy movie, as if that itself wasn't a remake, the Mummy's name was Ardith Bay in the 30s version. And I am seeing weird parallels here, and I don't know if it's because of Mummy brain rot, because I've been listening to the Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe podcast a lot lately, but still, it's weird. Of all the things to parallel, why?
And I could not take some of the fashion choices there seriously. Like, there are shots with Aurora, like, there is a net on her head, and it is this most sad-looking thing. And then there's this scene where she comes out on the boat. She's, like, dressed in this, like, fishnet cape, like, bikini costume. I have no idea what's going on there, but it's like B-schlock horror film, and not in a good way.
I guess the other issue is, like, it's difficult to get a tone for it because so much of the trailer is sort of establishing or trying to justify itself to the person watching the trailer. So sure, we get shots near the end of, like, oh, the exciting action or the climax set piece thing, but again, like, how much of the movie is that, or how much are we supposed to, like, are we going to spend any time learning about this or a person, or is it literally just a monster? Like, what's that film that came out recently, like an Abigail? Like, you know, is it just supposed to be like, oh, we're all trapped on this boat and we have to go fend ourselves from this mermaid?
Yeah, although if it's on a boat, were you thinking of Abigail, or were you thinking The Last Voyage of the Demeter from last year? There's been a lot of Draculas.
Yes.
There's been a lot of Draculas. But that sort of, like, monster thing where it's like, oh, like, we're trapped in a location, or we can't leave because this monster is stopping us from leaving.
I mean, when I read the description, it does seem like there is supposed to be a love story in it.
Where?
So, like, she's trying to seduce Dr. Prince, which, the name, like,
Ugh.
You're not even trying. You are not even trying.
Which is another way of saying that look forward to in each retelling episode on this in 2028. And
Someday.
We're lucky this doesn't have an IMDb, because Ida would go on strike if they had to inator it.
Editor Jasmine here, and actually Ayer did end up inatoring this movie and the other movie. It took some doing, though. And now we're going to do a little flashback. Diddle-loop, diddle-loop, diddle-loop.
Host Jasmine, I do not want to put these movies through the theater.
What? Why not?
They do not deserve our attention. There are far better horror movies we could discuss instead. Abigail has gotten an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes. Would you truly rather talk about this than celebrate Melissa Ferreira being vindicated?
I mean, the two aren't mutually exclusive. And obviously, yes, I'm glad my blood-soaked queen is doing well, because fuck Spyglass the Cowards, and Abigail was awesome. But still, I feel like we'll have a lot of fun with these movies.
And by fun, you mean roasting them?
Okay, fine, you caught me, but we've got good news here too, so it all evens out. Come on, buddy. Would you do it for a 6D snack?
You have waited your entire life to make that reference, haven't you?
Hey, my associating you with my favorite cartoon dog is a compliment of the highest order. How about 2 6D snacks? We found chili lime flavored data chips.
Very well.
Excuse me, was that an I just heard? It is way too soon for your puberty upgrade.
You are simply imagining things. Point of intersection found. This is a degree 5. Sun Ho Song was a compositor for Ahsoka, and Adrian Chan was a modeler for Lego Star Wars The Padawan Menace.
So, thank you to Ire for that. Even though I'm not sure I appreciate probably being lied to there. I'm sure it's fine. Honestly, this just makes me want us to do an our retelling Little Mermaid Horror Edition. Because here's the thing, I've said it before, I'm not against taking these kinds of stories and making them into horror movies. It's just that they're often done in such a lazy way.
Just basic.
Like, yeah, it's all exposition. The acting really is nothing to speak of. Barely anything to speak of, really.
For something that's supposed to say mostly take place on the water, it is very dry.
And again, it's not always fair to tease something for a trailer itself, but it just doesn't. They put their best foot forward, and it's this.
I'm not just blaming the act, I'm blaming the editing for this, because it is just like intercuts of anything or any sort of excitement.
Yeah, exactly. It's very low energy. And Shami, before we started, you had mentioned that it really did remind you of With a Kiss I Die, which we have reviewed on this podcast before. And it's just like, yeah, because you have a solid premise, but not a whole lot of energy being put into it.
And we don't even have, like, this distraction of Ella Quaco playing the mermaid.
Which, yeah, she absolutely would make an excellent mermaid. The whole idea is the mermaids can get on land if they drink blood. Which, like, I mean, I guess that's not the worst idea I've heard. But the lore did it so much better. Watch the lore, my friends. And then after you watch the lore, listen to 6 Degrees of Star Wars' episode on it. I'm on it. Friend of the show, Ellie, is on it. And, of course, Sam is the host. So.
Or again, watch the Stephen Chow, The Mermaid. He's the same guy who did Kung Fu Hustle and Shaolin Soccer. Because it was released in China and they sort of have the population boost, it is, let's see, the 13th highest grossing film of all time. So, it doesn't need our podcast to boost its success, certainly, but, it came to mind.
Oh,
I'm looking at the poster. That is a very pretty poster. Holy shit. I would definitely have to give that a watch because that does look lovely.
Again, it's unfair to judge everything by a trailer. Maybe they do something cool, like maybe they're are actually hideous. It's just they're using a glamour to make themselves look like it's like just they're using a glamour to make themselves look like this, and it's only when they open up their horrific mouth they look like something else, and yada yada, but
Which, that has been done, but I wouldn't say no to that being done more because I think that's a neat concept.
It's not suspenseful enough. Like, if you're advertising this as a horror film, then this was not the trailer to do it. Like, we do get that shot of her, like, her little tail splitting into legs, and it is like, the weirdest effects I've ever seen. It's like glue being, or tape being pulled off.
Yeah, no. like, you could absolutely make that horrific, because, I mean, yeah, your tail is splitting. You can make that as bloody as the original story does, in fact.
Yes, because The Little Mermaid is originally a body horror story.
Could have done something like the great sci-fi original classic, Sand Sharks, where they can just, like, keep swimming into the sand.
I mean, there was that shot of her trying to sail under the boat like she was Jaws.
Yeah, that was like the
scarier.
closest thing this trailer got to a somewhat scary moment. That and I guess their attempt at a jump scare when she had those big teeth. I've seen scarier in that one Pirates of the Caribbean movie with the mermaids. Say what you will about the sequels, that Jolly Sailor Bold sequence is actually genuinely kind of suspenseful.
The sirens from the Peter Pan film from 2000-something was
Be more creative.
So yeah, I'm not against horror Little Mermaids. I just expect better horror Little Mermaids. And speaking of monsters, I'll admit that the trailer for this actually dropped over a month ago, but I only just heard about it this week. And in fairness, the movie did just go into video on demand and apparently into some theaters this week, so fuck it, I can say it counts. The Monster Mash from the Asylum. For the listeners who don't know, but if you're listening to me, you probably have at least heard of the Asylum. They're this production company that's become infamous over the years for basically doing knockoff movies that are basically meant to confuse people in the DVD bargain bins, if those still exist.
Point of intersection found. This is a degree 6. Michael Madsen was in Kill Bill Volume 1 with Lucy Liu, who was in Visions.
And the thing that's, like, taking me aback about this is I don't know what it's supposed to be like the thing to be confused for. Did another film with a similar name came out recently? Because that's usually their MO, but the only thing that came to mind was, like, The Munsters, but that was 2 years ago, and also everyone hated The Munsters.
Yeah, and this is only because there is technically the through line of Dracula's daughter being kidnapped. I think my theory is that they heard that Abigail was originally going to be called Dracula's daughter at some point, because that's been like the worst kept secret about that movie. Like, people have said, yeah, marketing really, that was a lead they should have buried. And I'm thinking maybe somebody at the Asylum heard that was, but did not understand the assignment, but on the other hand, I mean, I hate to say it, but it does at least look a lot more fun than the Little Mermaid horror movie. I mean, I know that's not saying much, but...
Well, is it supposed to be like a black comedy horror film, or... Because all I was getting was, like, the taken out with, like, Dracula getting revenge on... I think it was Frankenstein in the trailer.
It's Victor Frankenstein. Basically, the premise is he's taking parts of all the different monsters to create a super monster, basically. Hence, kidnapping Dracula's daughter.
Oh, he's chimeraing.
Kind of,
He's doing a chimera. That was such weird casting on that part, because I don't remember if it's the guy that I'm thinking of, the one who always plays assholes. Okay, he's a character actor who's known for like being.
Are you talking about Michael Madsen? Because that seems to be the biggest name in this one.
He is just a jerk in every one of his roles.
I read in the comments, people are just like, what are you doing here? I don't think I've heard of him, but it seems like he's a rather beloved actor.
Yeah, he was like one of the people who the bride kills in Kill Bill. He was in Reservoir Dogs.
Oh, yeah, so no, this is definitely a downgrade for him.
The person who I kept, just because they inhabit a certain vibe, but the person on the trailer with like the slick back hair and like the white face.
Yeah.
I kept, like the person playing Dracula. Maybe it's just the dyslexia, but when I was skim reading and read it as Michael Madsen, I'm like, oh, wow.
No, do not be that
Marilyn
into the
Manson
universe.
looks a lot different now. But obviously it's a different person. It's just that they're invoking a type.
I see what you mean, though, although hopefully the person playing Dracula doesn't have any abuse allegations against him. Ugh.
Indeed. Friend of the podcast, Marilyn Manson.
God, no. God, no. But here's the thing. I have a theory about why we've had so many kind of weird adaptations of, well, various monster stuff, but especially Dracula stuff. Again, this is probably at least partially because I have the Dark Universe podcast on the brain, but obviously we all know their attempts at rebooting the Universal monsters belly flopped hard. But I do think, to a certain degree, people were kind of looking forward to the idea of it. Like, and for once, somehow, studios realized that, no, The Mummy 2017 failing was not in fact a sign that, no, people just don't like monster movies anymore. And it's like, no, we just like you to do effort. It's not dissimilar to what the DCEU ended up doing in the wake of Justice League and Batman v Superman not getting what they wanted out of it. And they're just kind of doing a bunch of weird experiments with it. And I think maybe this is kind of part of that.
This is the backdoor pilot to the Monster Squad. It's going to be Asylum's Monster Squad. It's going to be great.
It does have kind of Monster Squad vibes without the Goonies knockoffs.
No, but they do have that thing where they're going through like the trapdoor corridor, and like I think Wolfman does a barrel roll
right.
through it.
At least nobody said he had nards.
But one beef I did have, it's with the costuming for Dracula's daughter. They either didn't put that much effort into it, so she kind of looked like a knockoff Victorian gal. But if we weren't gonna get like something like Natasha Neglovanis in the Carmilla web series, then I was at least hoping for something like Lisa Frankenstein style.
Yeah, but the Asylum doesn't really do effort.
Here's something to try to speculate and bet on. So they have the Invisible Man.
Yeah.
Will they try to do invisibility effects? And if so, is he just
going to be naked?
Is he going to be naked? But it's
because that's just kind of the inherent thing with the Invisible Man. Like they act like, yeah, this man is not wearing any clothes.
But even more than that, it's like I can imagine a scenario where this guy spends like 95% of the film just wrapped up like that, and he's like, "Oh no, I gotta go over there," and he walks behind like a wall, and they just have like this tracking shot of nothing, so they don't actually have to like do anything.
And yeah, they kind of made him the wisecracker in the trailer, which it's weird that keeps happening because that also kind of happened in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie.
Yeah, we don't talk about League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Oh yeah, they couldn't directly adapt what happened to him.
Yeah.
The one time we want to do a MASH.
Yeah, no. But yeah, I'm bummed out because I like the idea of the Universal monsters sharing a universe, and it really is a shame that it seems like the only way I'm ever going to get that properly is, again, essentially a fan fiction podcast. Dylan and Dalton, please come on the show sometime.
What's funny to me is, like, because of the things that are public domain for the classic Universal monsters, it's, classic Universal monsters, it's, it's the go-to. It's the Dracula, it's the Frankenstein, it's Invisible Man. It's, there are other Universal horror monsters, they never ever do anything with them. Like, has there been a Creature of the Black Lagoon film in the last 70 years? I don't know.
I mean, The Shape of Water.
Yes.
I would say The Shape of Water counts. Yes, because actually I did come to find out, well, obviously The Creature of the Black Lagoon itself is not public domain. Yep. It is inspired by both Beauty and the Beast and certain South American mythology. So I'm going to say it counts for next Monster Month. But yeah, a lot of these characters don't get used very often because Universal does indeed still own them. Like, you gotta be careful with that. And I do think the Creature from the Black Lagoon does appear in the trailer for like a split second. As
a studio, they're associated with horrific schlock because that's sort of their bread and butter. But it's not impossible for an Asylum movie to be watchable. They're not always, they're usually not good, but it's not impossible. I have seen a decent Asylum film, but it's certainly a shot in the dark. Like, what was the one? It's been a long time. Remember when Paranormal Activity was like really popular?
Yeah.
They made a film that was basically one of those stealth, you're going to mistake them in the video storm thing called Paranormal Entity. And because of what Paranormal Activity was, it's not difficult to remake that vibe, so they basically just made Paranormal Activity, but it was for them. And I'm like, you know what? This is fine.
Yeah, I don't think that they have to necessarily be bad movies. It just seems like they keep on doing it. And what also frustrates me is they keep on doing concepts that I would actually love to see done well, including this and also that one Fairy Tale Adventures movie that they did. Like, I'm so mad. Make better monster mashes, please. I'll probably still watch it at some point. Maybe we'll cover it one day. Maybe it's better than it looks.
And we also need to look out for the possibility that the other film series that Asylum's no form is Sharknado. So it is highly likely that it could be in the Sharknado universe. We don't know.
Oh God, that would be terrifying. And not in the way that they want. And now that we have taken time to roast two film trailers that we're at best looking forward to making fun of someday, shall we end this on a happier note? Shami, I think I'll let you take this since this is basically your wheelhouse.
So, we have a new anthology series called And They Lived. Ever After. It's disabled women retell fairy tales. So this is basically classic European fairy tales that have been reimagined by disabled South Asian women. So we have stuff like a deaf Snow White, a blind Cinderella, a neurodivergent ugly duckling, and a wheelchair using Rapunzel. And this is basically based on the idea of like how like facial differences, disfigurements, they're seen as fearful in like classic fairy tales like Beauty and the Beast or like Hunchback of Notre Dame. And usually in these scenarios, like curse is lifted and then the disabilities, it's basically disability erasure. And yeah, that was one of my big beefs with the rough-faced girl, because there is a happy medium. Like, you can get rid of, like, the constant pain that she has to feel from those burns, but still, like, turn her facial difference into this pattern of vitiligo that mimics the Milky Way, so that it matches Strong Wind.
Yeah, I remember we did talk about that in the Cinderella episode. There's been a lot of discourse as of recently, thankfully, that, hey, maybe it's not cool to say magic will cure your disability, because at the end of the day, it is just erasure. It's like, make it seem like there's no room in even a magical world for you. And yeah, I can imagine that's a rough thing to internalize after a while.
So some of these stories that were adapted, like I do have like this one really good passage from this version of Rapunzel. So when the prince falls in love with Rapunzel and invites her to the castle, she says, "I can't. There's no ramp from the room to the garden." And the prince said that he'll find a way, he can carry you down. But her response is, "Carry me? I don't think I would like that. I always go everywhere wheeling my own chair." So that is a power move on her part.
Actually, I can't believe we didn't even mention the original Rapunzel story also, or at least the Grimm fairy tale version. It does that sort of thing too, because the prince gets blinded, but then her tears heal them, which, you know, led to that one scene in Tangled that makes everybody cry.
This version of Pinocchio is a schoolgirl named Mariam, whose prosthetic leg gets longer every time. And because she's bullied at school and excluded by her classmates, she befriends the moon, who tells her, you can choose how you want to feel, no matter what people say. Yeah.
Yeah, that is really an intriguing take on Pinocchio, because when you really think about it, like, as far as, like, these classic stories go, I think Pinocchio changes the least through each adaptation when you think about it.
Yeah.
That's, like, the most outrageous take I've heard of it, maybe since AI. But, yeah, I am looking forward to this anthology. I think it'll be a nice little read.
Good. It's really giving new precedence to my idea of a neurodivergent Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah.
I still have to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing that's sticking out to me about it is it reminds me of those... What was that other series you had us do almost this time last year with... I can't remember the title for them, but when we did Self-Made Boys, it reminded me of that series. Like, I didn't go through the other books in that series, but that also was approaching, like, fairy tale or specifically public domain works, but with a twist or with a marginalized group that has... You wouldn't normally see represented in a narrative of... or, like, a retelling of this sort of story. It seems like that is what it's going for, and I guess on that basis it would be interesting to see what they add to those stories, or what they want to explore these stories with through the avenue. It's like, oh, what if there was a blind Cinderella or a deaf Snow White? Like, what does that add to those stories now that they're looking at them through those lenses?
Yeah, it was Remix Classes. That's the name of the series.
And this is also a case of authors' own voices, because all the contributors here are disabled. Actually, the person who put this all together is Nidhi Akshot Goyal, the founder of Rising Flame, a feminist disability rights group in India.
Yeah, so that's really cool. And yeah, I hope that it ends up being really good and ends up making people feel seen. That's always good.
I'm wondering what they do with the narrator in this version, because if I remember Into the Woods correctly...
Oh, so are we thinking that it's going to be all one big fairy tale universe like this? I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, they're inspired from Asylum from the last entry, so they want to make it a shared universe. All these princesses are within the same kingdom, yeah.
I think it's more like Kissing the Witch in terms of shared universes. As a neurodivergent brown girl, this is definitely up my wheelhouse. It's something that I finally seeing myself in for like the first time.
Yeah, because like Shami, you and I basically built our friendship on...
Yes!
on a love of fairy tales, but also wanting to make them reflect more voices and more people. So I bet little baby Shami inside your heart that's like screaming, finally!
Yes! Yes, this is going into her library.
Aww. Maybe there'll be an illustrated version. That'd be very cool.
And as someone who doesn't experience necessarily the same struggles or necessarily has to deal with it on a day-to-day basis, it is always interesting to see or be able to experience it vicariously through this sort of narrative.
Yeah.
For a while, I took ASL courses, and one of the parts of the deaf experience that I found interesting is that there was a lot of contention around, say, cochlear implants. People who are deaf don't want to lose what they see as a identifying feature of themselves by regaining hearing. They would rather remain deaf and not have the benefit of hearing than to lose what they feel is a fundamental part of their experience.
And it kind of goes to show how the culture at large has kind of not been listening in that regard, because, yes, we call it a disability, but how much of it is social?
It's our choice whether,
Yeah, is it really a matter of it's
it.
just society not working with you? Again, happy to end this on a good note after we made fun of those trailers. Will I still probably watch those movies? Probably, just because I try not to judge things too harshly on its trailers, but I'm not overly optimistic.
Yeah, have fun roasting it.
Meanwhile, I am optimistic about this anthology.
And who knows, we might get around to reviewing one of the stories featured within or one of the films previously discussed in, 2023. Sorry, that's in the past. Yes, we're going to do it in the past. Yeah, we're going to do it last year.
Last year. 2025. We're aiming for that.
Yes, that one.
So many retellings, so little time. All right, and I guess anything to plug?
Okay, so you can find me on the Online Muse on Tumblr, where you can find me for listicles and graphics and all your fancast requests.
And my plug is a well plug. It is a device you can put over a well in order to basically have a spigot so you don't have to, use a bucket.
Justin, one of these days I'm going to do a compilation of all your plug jokes, and it's going to be great.
And as always, you can find me on Twitter, Tumblr, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Faye Riviera. You can also follow this show on Twitter at IER Podcast. Please consider sharing the show with anybody you think would be interested. Please consider reviewing us or giving us a rating on the podcatcher of your choice. And if you have room in your wallets, well, actually, we have a link below where we would actually prefer you spend your money on the Center for Disaster Philanthropy, especially in light of the recent tornadoes that hit Oklahoma. But if you'd still like to help us reach the next chapter of our story, you can donate to our Patreon, our Ko-Fi, or the Support the Show link below. And yes, I'm aware the Passover episode is now late as well. We are doing our best to make sure the Passover Prince of Egypt special and the Hadestown episodes will be coming up before the anniversary and before Eliza Doolittle Day on May 20th. Where, of course, we'll be covering My Fair Lady there. Thank you so much for your listening and your kind patience. And that was an episode of Retelling the News.